If you clicked on this video because you have a music theory exam tomorrow and you're going to have to label the difference between a German augmented sixth and an Italian augmented sixth, you should probably go watch something else. Because in this video, I want to talk about augmented sixths from a more practical standpoint. Instead of worrying about how we label something from hundreds of years ago, how can we actually take the music theory, use it in our own music? I'm probably going to tick off a lot of music theory purists here. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I've written music for projects on Disney and Netflix, and this is where I talk about the craft of writing music. An augmented sixth chord is a chromatic chord, meaning it uses pitches from outside the diatonic key, and it gets its name because the outer voices form an augmented sixth. Traditionally, these outer voices resolve in opposite directions to the fifth scale degree of the key on the dominant chord. Now, I don't know about you, but an augmented sixth interval feels a little weird. I think it makes a lot more sense to think of this as a minor seventh. And with that in mind, I think the whole chord itself really should just be thought about as a dominant seventh chord on the flat sixth degree. So the different nationalities, the German, the Italian, the French, all of these are really just different flavors, different altered chord versions of that dominant seventh chord. At Berklee, we would call this a sub 5 of 5, which is basically like a tritone flip of the secondary dominant. Instead of being a fifth above the target chord, it's a half step above the target chord. So really, an augmented sixth chord is a sub 5 of 5. To demonstrate how you can actually use this chord, I picked out 4 examples from a style very different from Mozart or Beethoven.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles!
The Beatles use these chords in the same way you or I would writing today for a song or a string quartet or a film score. Let's start with what is probably the most common and useful application of the augmented sixth chord, which is to add extra emotion and tension to the dominant. In the chorus of Oh Darling, we're at the height of desperation. This section is ending on a half cadence on the dominant chord, holding on to this tension that won't be resolved until the next verse. The way the F is being used here is like a decoration of that 5 chord. It's giving us this extra tension and this extra bite and discomfort that's really going to drive home that sense of half cadence. A similar example, but one I think is more about using an interesting color than it is emphasizing the tension of the dominant chord, is in Honey Pie, where they use this flat 6 to 5 progression in the turnaround. It's a very happy and strolling song, and so the flat 6 adds this extra whimsical quality to it. Because it's a major chord from outside the major key, it has this little bit of extra pleasantness to it.
So won't you please come home?
The E flat 7 is also the second chord in the whole verse, so using that in the turnaround really helps tie the section together nicely. In Blackbird, we also get the flat 6 to 5 chord progression, but to me the effect is a lot less cadential. The bass line has just been climbing up at a fast harmonic rhythm, now it's starting to descend back down. To me, the flat 6 here doesn't feel like a predominant as much as it does a passing chromatic chord.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. Only waiting for this moment to arise.
Also notice how that descending stepwise movement continues all the way until it breaks for the cadence. The last example comes from Mean Mr. Mustard. We have the flat 6 dominant 7th chord resolving to the 5/7 chord. This is another one I think is more like Honey Pie, where the flat 6 to 5 is being used more for the color and kind of this touch of exoticism than it is to kind of push the strain on that dominant quality. Although you get a little bit of that too. For more harmony videos, check out this one where I talk about how composers use chromatic median chords for those fantasy film score effects, or check out this one where I talk about using suspended chords when you need chords that are neutral instead of too happy or too sad. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.